Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate. Just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
The guy's driving a car, and he's going about 40 miles an hour, and he looks out, and there's a chicken running alongside the car. And he looks, you don't believe a chicken, and he goes a little fast, and he looks, the chicken got 3 legs. See, now he hits 55, the chicken shoots in front of him, cuts in front of the car, runs up an alley. Guy turns around, goes up to the other farmer standing with a bib overalls. Can I help you? He says, yeah. A chicken with 3 legs was going so fast that he passed my car and run up in your alley. He says, I know that. That's my chicken. I raise 3-legged chickens. He says, why? He says, do you like a drumstick? I do. Does your wife like a drumstick? She does. Or perhaps you have a guest. Maybe Ed comes over and likes a drumstick. Gee, I never thought of that. How do they taste? He says, we don't know. We never caught one.
Good morning. It's Thursday, Jordan Peterson Thursday, December the 4th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and Jordan Peterson. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, Varney and Company.
Stu and Varney and Company. Take it away, Stu.
All right. Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. The president has pulled the rug from under the electric vehicle industry. He has withdrawn the special treatment electrics received and changed the rules that penalize gas-powered cars. The president says cars will get cheaper and consumers will save money. It is a dramatic reversal of policy. Here's the reaction from the auto stocks. They are mostly higher. We've got GM up just 30 cents, Ford's up 6 cents, Stellantis up 40 cents. Not much of a gain. Overall, though, stocks are higher after yesterday's gains. The Dow, it was up 400 points yesterday. This morning up 21, S&P up 4. Not that much change. Bitcoin holding around 93,000. Where are we? 92.5 to be precise. The yield on the 10-year Treasury, 4.09%. The 2-year, around 3.5%, 3.52. Oil still below $60 a barrel, 59.23. Gas still averages below $3 a gallon, 2.99. All right, on the show today, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says even if the Supreme Court strikes down tariffs, it won't matter. He says they will be reimposed immediately. The Minnesota Somali scandal rolls on. DHS's Kristi Noem will investigate the Somali community. Congress is investigating the administration of Governor Tim Walz. He may be called to testify. The Washington Post calls him out today. They're slamming him for not taking responsibility in the billion-dollar scandal. There are now questions about the Somali community in Lewiston, Maine, at issue. Activists controlling corrupted welfare programs getting cover from politicians who just want their votes. And we'll bring you the quiet millionaires. They don't look rich, they don't boast, but they're out there. How did they do it? Make big bucks and stay cool? We really do. Cover it all. It's Thursday, December the 4th, 2025.
And that was Varney and Company, Non-Profit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now some more Varney and Company. Stewart talking to Senator Senator Rand.
Officials will meet with lawmakers on Capitol Hill. It's all about that second strike on the alleged drug boat that killed 2. Senator Rand Paul joins me now. Mr. Senator, now, apart from the recent boat attacks, are you okay with this huge military buildup? I know you don't like the boat attacks. I got that. But this is a huge military buildup. What do you think to that?
I think the boat attacks are a prelude to an invasion of Venezuela. I don't like the idea of an offensive war. I like the idea of regime change. It's really one of the things I liked about Donald Trump was that he was against the Iraq war. He was against the war in Libya. He was against the war because often regime change leads to chaos and great expenditures both in lives and in treasure. So I hope that's not what's coming, but it certainly looks like it's a possibility.
One way or another, you think Maduro is gone pretty soon?
I think for his people, I hope he's gone, of course. I wrote a book, The Case Against Socialism, and in the opening chapters we talk about starvation, loss of weight, just the gangs roaming, people eating their pets in Venezuela. So I want, the Venezuelan people to have a chance. I just don't think a military option, particularly without permission of Congress, is a good idea.
What's the alternative to a military operation?
Well, the alternative is a messy world where we say, you know what, we don't always, we're not always able to establish perfect government everywhere. I mean, Colombia has a left-leaning socialist as well. South America at any point in time has 3 or 4 socialists running the countries, but it hasn't been our policy to say, oh, well, socialism is terrible and it's ruinous for its people, which is true, but we don't typically go in and just replace people. I mean, think of the despair of those in China, particularly since Tiananmen Square. But we don't advocate really going in and having regime change in China. At least rational people don't. So, yeah, it's an imperfect world, and we continue to strive for better, but we don't think that we have the ability or the obligation to replace governments around the world.
Do you think we could use the CIA in some way inside Venezuela? I know I wouldn't call it regime change, but it's a way of getting rid of Maduro. I'm not saying kill him. I'm just saying organize the generals to get rid of him.
Okay, so good enough right there. So they have Rand on, Stu does, and not because they really give a rat's ass about what he has to say, but because he provides there's a game that's called Let's You and He Fight. And that's what they're doing right now. They're setting it up. So what they'll do is they've got on the one hand the administration, which is doing certain things, and then they go out and they look for people that oppose the administration so that they can create this conflict. And once they've created the conflict, then they can ostensibly get ratings. People are going to tune in. Hey, Rand says no good. This is no good. Right? So he's opposed the administration. Then they're going to go get an administration official to say, hey, Senator Rand says blah, blah, blah. What do you say? And so you get this back and forth situation again where you're creating a fight, creating an argument in order to get ratings. So the other thing I was noticing more specifically about what Rand was saying was that he doesn't mention drugs. The whole reason for getting rid of these boats is not because we're looking for regime change. That's his invention. We're doing it because this is drug interdiction. So if there's going to be any regime change in Venezuela, it's going to be because of what? Drugs. So that that Venezuela doesn't become another Mexico. Mexico is a drug state. And Venezuela is on its way to becoming a drug country. We don't want that. That's no good. We don't want people trying to smuggle fentanyl and other illegal drugs and deadly drugs into our country. And he doesn't address that issue either, by the way, that this was started by Venezuela. Venezuela, Colombia, and Mexico started this by invading our country and doing it with smugglers and contraband. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of Maria and she's talking with one of her guests about Gavin Newsom and his prospects of running for office for president.
The morning, actress Halle Berry saying it plainly, she doesn't want California Governor Gavin Newsom to be president in 2028. Mahak, your reaction?
Well, look, I think Halle Berry has never come out on either side. So for her to criticize this Democrat disillusionment is actually showing the American people really who he is. Highest poverty, mass homelessness, skyrocketing crime, failing schools, a failing middle class that's creating a mass exodus. And now Halle Berry says this man is not for women. So I think it's going to continue to show if Gavin Newsom could put California in the gutter, what will he do with the rest of America? Now,
okay, so interesting point. Two things. First of all, she lists off all of these conservative issues or values, a rising crime rate, blah, 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 blah. Again, you're not going to get anything done in California. You're not going to get anything done in the Democrat Party unless you talk to Democrats. What you should have done and criticize him for failing the Democrats. Now, she eventually gets to that when she says, Halle Berry says he's not for women. That's a Democrat issue. Are you a feminist? If you're not a feminist, you're not going to get a nomination. Okay, so that's one of the things that the left cares about. So what this lady should have said was, he did nothing about climate change. He did nothing to house the homeless. He did nothing to get single-payer health care in the state of California. And he's done nothing to soak the rich. Okay, now you're talking to the Democrats because, again, this is about a Democrat primary and who it is that's going to run as a Democrat for the next president of the United States. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, motivation.
It's one thing to believe when you got money in your pocket. It's one thing to believe when your marriage is working out and you got your health and your children acting like they got good sense. It's easy to believe then. Oh, but when you get that diagnosis, say you ain't gonna be here long. When you lose your job, when someone you thought you'd be with for the rest of your life said, no, we can't do this no more. There will be times when you will feel alone and you will feel deserted, when you'll feel weak and you'll doubt yourself and other people will doubt you and you ask yourself, am I crazy? Maybe I am dreaming. Maybe I don't have what it takes. That's going to happen.
It is literally at the darkest moment when it dawns. You don't really even get to the next level to your darkest moments. Stop tripping when it get dark and you running. You running from your success. Like, why would you do something for 10 years, then quit? Why would you do something for 11 years, then quit? So for a lot of you, if you was going to quit, you should have quit when you put your first grand in it. You like 20,000 deep now. You like 9,800 hours deep into it. It only take 10,000 hours.
Pain doesn't leave us the same. It's like problems. It's like failure. It moves us. It either moves us forward and we get better, or we have a wrong attitude and it moves us backward and then we get bitter.
You don't get to choose when or why you go through pain. That's out of your control. But you always get to decide how you respond, how you handle it, what you do about it.
Life is tough. You may have been overlooked, underrated, overshadowed, underestimated. You may not have the money, the resources, the perfect genetics, or the perfect past. But I'll tell you this, if you have a 5-letter word called heart, that is all you will ever need. You are the hero you have been waiting for. And see, the hero cannot start at the top. That's a boring movie. The only way you can start at the top is if you're digging a hole. The greater the challenge, the greater the growth. As long as your heart says yes, you can overcome a million no's. You will face doubters. They all have the same disease. It's called possibility blindness. They can only see with their eyes. It is literally necessary to have haters to be doubted. This whole world will discourage you. People will try to ruin you. But if you follow your heart, you can dodge the bullets that they shoot at you. You can build a mansion with the bricks that they threw at you. Just make the decision now for the future you.
We've got to auto-correct the negativity. We don't look at the problem. We look at the solution. We don't look at the story of us losing. We look at the story of us winning. And we tell ourselves that by continually selling ourselves on our own life. This is the vision I have for my life. This is the way it's going to be. These are my goals. This is who I am. This is my plan. These are my values. And I don't need anyone to validate me. I don't need anyone to believe in me. All I need to do is execute and believe in the work.
I'm not going to rest until I have it. It's necessary. I'm going to do it. It's on me. No one's going to make it happen for me. I get some help and assistance, but I know that it's on me. Will it be easy? No, it's going to be hard, but it doesn't matter what it costs. If it's hard, I'll do it hard until I make it happen.
And I know that when I'm done, the result will be there and it will feel amazing.
You must trust. That's when you must believe. This is what I'm supposed to do. And when something happens to you, Don't experience it as a failure, as a defeat. Look at it and find out, what is it that I didn't know? What is it that I can learn from this experience? It's done. When people have that kind of determination, when they don't allow what they don't have to become a factor, when they don't allow what the odds are to really matter, when they are constantly looking and seeking to find a way to make it happen, that's when the universe yields to you. That's when you start operating at a higher level of beingness. That's when it almost seems magical as you are able to speak the word and things begin to materialize. Sometimes when you don't know what to do and you don't know what to say and you don't know how long it's going to be, all you can do to express your fight, just keep on walking. I don't know where the money's going to come from, but keep on walking. I don't know when the problem's going to get fixed, but keep on walking. It was good they rejected you. It was good you didn't get the job. It was good that it didn't happen the way you imagined it. The harder the battle, the sweeter the victory. Oh, it's sweet to you. It's good to you. Why? See, when it's hard and there's a struggle, what you become in the process is more important than the dream. That's far more important. The kind of person you become, the character that you build, the courage that you develop, the faith that you're manifesting. Oh, it's something that you get up in the morning, you look yourself in the mirror, you're a different kind of person. You walk with a different kind of spirit. And people know that you know what life is, that you have embraced life. You know it was hard, but you did it hard.
And that was a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little meditation. And that was a little meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now an article in the American Thinker by Joachim Oster. It's called A Return to Muscular Christianity.
A Return to Muscular Christianity. In his new book, The Two Swords of Christ, 5 Centuries of War Between Islam and the Warrior Monks of Christendom, Raymond Ibrahim sets the record straight about Christian military orders led by great captains of faith and ferocity that understood the need for what he calls muscular Christianity. The Templars and Hospitallers. The title of the book alludes to history's dominant Christian military orders, the Knights of the Temple and the Hospital, together representing the two swords. In reinvigorating the accounts of these two orders, Ibrahim points to a larger theme also represented in the book's title, namely, that Christians are to fight two sorts of evils with two sorts of swords, a spiritual sword against spiritual enemies, and a physical sword against physical enemies. The notion of that Christians should be prepared for both spiritual and physical conflict comes from Luke's Gospel, where Christ instructs his disciples to sell their garments and buy a sword, and upon bringing him 2 swords, he tells them, "It is enough." From this foundational context, 2 Swords launches into a dramatic and captivating arc of history from the genesis of the 2 military orders through the improbable victories and harrowing defeats that framed their existence and eventual dissolution. The journey starts in 1119 with the humble beginnings of 9 Christian warriors led by a veteran of the First Crusade, Hugh of Paynes, who decided to form a brotherhood of guardians to serve as a protective detail for Christian pilgrims traveling to and from Jerusalem. This small band of veterans viewed their solemn enterprise as their own personal Christian ministry, so to speak. Ironically, the warrior monks were given the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount as their lodge and operational headquarters, giving rise to the names the Knights of the Temple, or Templars. A decade later, a forward-thinking and highly influential monk named Bernard of Clairvaux energetically championed the Templars' cause. Bernard saw the need for a new kind of soldier, one that should be a man of God, half lay, half religious, mighty in war and fervent in prayer. His efforts led to formal recognition of the Templars as a religious order by the Catholic Church and its rapid growth to the tune of thousands of knights and training centers throughout Europe. Producing similar men who lived the warrior monk ethos was the Order of the Knights of the Hospital of St. John. As the name suggests, this order was founded as a Christian hospital in Jerusalem with the objective of caring for sick and injured Christian pilgrims, eventually opening their doors to the sick and poor in general. While the Hospitallers became a fierce military order on par with the Templars, they maintained their mission of caregiving throughout the order's entire history. Notably, Ibrahim brings to life the little-known fact that the Hospitallers transformed into preeminent naval tacticians after being forced to flee Acre and relocate to the island of Rhodes. In many ways, they were like modern Navy SEALs, feared soldiers, highly skilled in warfare on both sea and land. By the end of the book, this much about the 2 orders is quite clear. The Knights of the Temple and the Hospital were both Christendom's greatest warriors, and they were also among its more sincere and pious. The big picture of the 2 Swords of Christ. Constructed as a series of short chapters, 2 Swords has the pace and feel of a dramatic Netflix series. Ibrahim brings this ancient world into vivid clarity while still telling a cohesive history of the 2 orders and centuries of clashes with Islamic empires fixated on conquering the West. To that end, 2 Swords features Ibrahim's strength as a narrator and storyteller who seamlessly weaves in direct quotations and observations collected from eyewitness accounts or writings produced around the time of the events. By pinning the stories to first-hand accounts written by both Christian and Muslim chroniclers, the book is grounded in the sobering reality that in the face of jihadists bent on Islamic hegemony, there will always be a need for Christians who embrace the pursuit of those 2 ancient virtues, piety and righteous militancy. This is especially true at a time when woke historians and politicians have spun the myth that Islamic violence is mainly the byproduct of Muslim anger at past Western colonialism. In the end analysis, Two Swords, along with Ibrahim's other works, eviscerates this secular revisionist and anti-Western historical rubbish, illustrating that jihad is doctrinal and that the words, deeds, and objectives of its adherents predictably form a pattern that dates back to the 7th century. In that way, Ibrahim is much like Bernard of Clairvaux, vigorously urging Christians to recognize the historical patterns of Islamic violence and awaken the warrior ethos that lies dangerously dormant on the pillow of 21st century prosperity. Joachim Oster is a freelance writer focusing on the intersection of culture and Christianity.
And again, that was Joachim Oster and the article, A Return to Muscular Christianity in the American Thinker. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the Jeffrey Mead.
There are truths we have not been saying out loud. Number 1, go to Somali malls. Cash only, no receipts. That's sus. We got to say that out loud. Number 2, Somali tax accountants. They say, oh, you have no tax today. That's sus. We got to call that out. What? Yeah, Somali trucking companies cutting corners. That's sus. Let's not do that. Appreciate that. Let me keep going. Yeah, helping each other lie on forms. Like it's some sort of community service we're doing to each other. What? Yeah, and recently I just saw a Somali sheriff, police officer, saying that he only serves the Somali community. What are you doing? You're an American. The whole citizens is your duty to protect and provide great, excellent service.
This is good. I respect him for saying these things, especially out in public, being willing to call your own people out. I understand that because I do it. Many black people will complain about being stereotypal. People shouldn't stereotype us and blah, 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 blah. That's wrong and they shouldn't do it. Okay, well, you had your wishful thinking. Now let's get back to the planet of reality. They're going to stereotype until we give them undeniably reasons or undeniably good reasons to not stereotype us in that way. But rather than complaining about what they shouldn't do, let's change our behavior to where the stereotypes start to change. Same thing here. If people want Americans to be more comfortable with the Somalis in Minnesota, then they should work on doing things that don't make the public uncomfortable. More specifically, things that are morally bankrupt or wrong, like this creator was pointing out. I think if he does that, there's going to be less animosity towards that community. I think there will be less fraud and less money being taken from taxpayers in an unright way or unfair way. But I think it benefits everyone. Taxpayers are getting scammed less. People are not looking at Somali people with side eyes out in Minnesota, and people start to focus on other things. I'm not saying many of these people shouldn't be deported. Many of them absolutely should be deported. But it is good to see a Somali man come out here and start saying, hey, we need to do this, this, and this better. Because with his mentality, I don't care if he's in the country. Cool, I'm glad you're here. He seems like a quality contributing member of society with moral standards who doesn't want to take advantage of Americans and the American taxpayer. Glad you're here. Welcome in. Let's get after it. I'm not focused on the skin color. I'm more focused on the type of person he is. And he seems like a quality person. I could be wrong. That's just one post. I'm just basing it off that post. He seems like a pretty good dude with pretty good morals. And the courage to step up and call your community out. Because it takes courage. Yeah, I think what he's doing is good for the people in Minnesota. I think it's good for the country. I think it's better for race relations in the country as well. I think all around it's good. So hats off to him. Also, don't forget I have a free email newsletter I send out every morning at 7 a.m. The link to that is in my profile. Just go there, click the link, drop your email in, hit subscribe, and you'll be good to go.
Okay, so there you go. The Jeffrey Mead. Let me see, it's a TikTok. The Somali that was calling out his own community is a TikTok, but it doesn't have his account name, so I don't know who that was. But anyways, Jeffrey Mead said it well. I appreciate him. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Georgia Meloni.
Voi artigiani, piccoli imprenditori, siete il motore dell'economia nazionale, l'anima del Made in Italy, un mondo che mette al centro le persone, le conoscenze, i territori, che sa innovarsi senza perdere la propria identità. Voi rappresentate un patrimonio materiale e immateriale che questo governo ha dimostrato con i fatti di voler proteggere e valorizzare. Lo abbiamo fatto con molte scelte, come la decisione di alzare da 65 a 85 mila euro di fatturato la soglia per accedere al regime forfettario, l'estensione del concordato preventivo biennale alle piccole e medie imprese e alle partite IVA, il contrasto a quell'odioso fenomeno delle attività apri e chiudi, ovvero quelle attività che eludono il fisco aprendo e chiudendo in breve tempo, non pagando le tasse e i contributi e riaprendo con un altro nome, ma soprattutto truffando gli imprenditori onesti. Finora sono state chiuse d'ufficio circa 15.000 attività, un risultato importante per lo Stato, ma ancora di più per gli imprenditori che hanno subito per troppo tempo questa concorrenza sleale. Confermiamo il nostro impegno con la nuova legge di bilancio che rifinanzia la nuova Sabatini, garantisce continuità alle risorse per la zona economica speciale unica del Sud, conferma la superdeduzione del costo del lavoro per le nuove assunzioni e reintroduce il super e l'iperammortamento per gli investimenti. Ma è un impegno che va di pari passo con altri provvedimenti che io considero molto significativi. Penso al primo disegno di legge annuale sulle piccole e medie imprese, un impegno atteso da quasi 15 anni ma che nessuno dei governi che ci avevano preceduto ha rispettato. Il disegno di legge prevede anche la delega per la riforma della legge quadro sull'artigianato, fondamentale per liberare il potenziale del comparto, e a proposito di potenziale credo sia un segnale importante anche il rilancio di uno strumento come Artigiancassa, per rispondere alla domanda di credito spesso ignorata di artigiani e piccoli imprenditori. Ma non intendiamo rinunciare ad affrontare altre questioni che consideriamo fondamentali, come il peso opprimente della burocrazia che rappresenta un freno insostenibile alla crescita. E non dimentico ovviamente un altro tema cruciale, che è quello del costo dell'energia, questione che sta molto a cuore a tutto il governo e sulla quale stiamo lavorando per offrire soluzioni concrete. Abbiamo intenzione di affrontare queste e altre sfide e ovviamente abbiamo intenzione di continuare a farlo insieme a voi, che da sempre avete a cuore il bene dell'Italia, che vi rimboccate le maniche ogni giorno per renderla più forte e prospera. E quindi anche i lavori di questa assemblea saranno per noi preziosi e davvero grazie, buona assemblea a tutti.
And that was Georgia Meloni. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from an Instagram account called Kinsley Deborah.
Bon, l'année 2025 touche bientôt à sa fin et j'espère que tu es déjà fier de toi pour avoir ne serait-ce que surmonté cette année. Surmonter tes peines, surmonter tes doutes, surmonter tes échecs, vraiment, c'était pas évident. Et je voulais juste te partager une petite liste de choses que je t'encourage à mettre en place pour bien démarrer 2026. En premier, je te dirais de faire un audit. Bon, l'année 2025 touche...
And that was Kinsley Deborah. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Jerry Wayne.
There are evenings in a man's life when he's struck not by lightning nor revelation, but by the sight of a woman whose presence shakes the very architecture of his spirit. And when she crossed that floor, Lord help me, something ancient and foolish inside me sat up and hollered. I said to her, with all the trembling dignity I could muster, child, you look good. Won't you consider reversing course and presenting that blessed geometry once more in my direction? For you are a fine woman, the kind that makes a man forget scripture and science in the same breath. And I confess it freely, I felt the heat rise in me, the sort that makes a man sweat through his drawers like he's been running from the law in August. My mind clouded, my senses overturned, and suddenly I understood the plight of every poor fool who ever tried to autograph something that did not legally belong to him. My thoughts turned unholy. I imagined walking her like a dog, though I have never managed to walk a dog successfully in my life. I imagined breaking her off a piece, though I am not sure which piece nor why she would want it. Yet the Spirit moved, and who am I to argue with the Spirit? She was working my nerves like they were a church piano, and she a visiting revivalist who did not come here to play quietly, and she knew it. Oh, she knew. Women always know when their sway has pushed a man halfway to the curb of his own good sense. The music beat on like a diesel engine trying its best, and the chest on this woman sat proud enough to make a Baptist reconsider his denominational loyalty. I found myself wanting to bite not out of aggression, but out of a simple God-fearing appreciation for craftsmanship. And in the wild theater of my imagination, I brought her home, laid her upon that old couch that has held more sorrow than comfort. I envisioned knocking the devil out of her, though the devil has never once been intimidated by me. I wished for her to bend low, not from obligation, but to assist me in understanding the intricate mechanics of my own desires, which have historically been unreliable and poorly maintained. I wished to make myself known in hopes the Lord would not smite me mid-sentence. And once again, I said it with all the hushed reverence of a man standing at the threshold of his own undoing. Girl, you look good. Won't you back that thing up?
And that was Jerry Wayne. Back in a minute. Thank you now, Bill Maher.
If we are ever going to get back to the old America, that's got to be the Democrats' part of the bargain. Stop coming up with radically new and often terrible ideas, and then in the next breath insist there be no debate about any of it. That if you don't see it right away and go along, you're bad, stupid, and deplorable. As if you were saying, duh, 2 + 2 = 5. Isn't that obvious? Yeah, it's obvious you can't add. You can't just say shit. Math is racist. Queers for Palestine. Looting is cool. Healthy at any weight. If the men's football team played the women's team, it would be a tie.
And that was Bill Maher. Back in a minute. Thank you now. And I was going to say before I announce it is that 2 weeks ago, those of you that might have been listening on YouTube, if you missed out on my Thursday Jordan Peterson podcast, it's because YouTube blocked it for copyright reasons. So I'm not going to be using Audible, his book on Audible, for that reason. So we'll just go back to his YouTube clips. So, Jordan Peterson.
You know, it's an interesting thing when someone with a narcissistic personality wounds you. It's not just a simple disagreement or an unfortunate misunderstanding. No, it's something deeper, something more insidious. Because when a narcissist hurts you, they aren't just hurting you in the moment, they're undermining your reality, manipulating your perception of yourself, and distorting your understanding of trust, loyalty, and even morality itself. Now, you might ask, why does God allow this? Why does he let people like this get away with so much harm? And that's a fair question, one that has troubled people for thousands of years. If God is just, why does injustice flourish? If he is good, why do the wicked prosper? But here's the thing, God doesn't operate on your timeline. We often expect instant justice like a lightning strike of divine retribution. But reality, both psychological and spiritual reality, doesn't work that way. There are rules to this game, and they unfold over time. You see, when someone engages in deception, manipulation, and cruelty, they are playing a short-term game. They seek immediate gratification, control, power, validation without regard for the long-term consequences. But those consequences exist. They build up layer upon layer like cracks in a foundation. And when the collapse comes, it is total. It is inevitable. You see, when someone acts narcissistically, when they manipulate, deceive, and exploit, they're playing a very short-term game. And that's an important thing to understand because deception, by its very nature, is unstable. It can hold for a time. It can even appear remarkably successful in the short run. But what people fail to consider, what narcissists fail to consider, is that reality isn't something you can outrun indefinitely. It's not something you can twist and shape according to your whims without consequence. Because truth, whether we like it or not, is fundamentally structured into existence itself. Now, this is something that becomes evident If you examine patterns across history, across relationships, and even within your own life, when someone engages in manipulation, and I don't mean simple dishonesty, but a deep pathological restructuring of reality to serve their ego, they have to expend an immense amount of energy maintaining that illusion. Every lie, every falsehood, every misrepresentation requires constant upkeep. It's like constructing an elaborate house of cards. It might look stable, even impressive, but there's a problem. It's inherently fragile. And here's the terrifying reality of that fragility. The bigger the deception, the more elaborate the structure, the more catastrophic the collapse. Narcissists don't just lie, they curate a reality around themselves, one where they are the victim or the hero, never the villain. They rewrite history to paint themselves as either misunderstood geniuses or persecuted saints. And when people begin to buy into that illusion, it reinforces their belief that they can bend reality to their will. But they can't, because fundamentally reality is truth-centric. It doesn't exist to serve your perception. It exists independent of your desires, and the moment a person starts constructing a world that diverges too greatly from what is real, they are on a collision course with an inescapable reckoning. And that reckoning may not come today, it may not even come in a decade, but it is building slowly, incrementally, like water carving its way through rock. And once the dam breaks, once the illusion can no longer sustain itself, the truth emerges with overwhelming force. Now, you see this in every domain of life. Think about relationships. Think about what happens when someone is systematically deceptive and self-serving. At first, they might get away with it. They might convince their spouse, their friends, their colleagues, even themselves that they are right, that they are good, that any problems they face are the fault of others. And for a while, this works. But deception has a peculiar quality. It accumulates interest over time. It doesn't just sit there. It grows. Why? Because every falsehood requires another to cover it up, and another, and another. And before long, you aren't just maintaining a lie, you're maintaining an entire false world. And the thing about false worlds is that they aren't stable. They wobble under the weight of their own contradictions. They require constant reinforcement. And the narcissist, despite their belief that they are untouchable, cannot hold all the pieces together indefinitely. Eventually, cracks form. Maybe it starts subtly, an inconsistency here, an unexpected challenge there. Maybe someone notices something that doesn't quite add up. And when that happens, the narcissist is forced to work even harder to keep the illusion intact. They double down. They become more manipulative, more controlling. They lash out at those who question them, because to acknowledge even a single crack in the facade is to risk the whole thing collapsing. And this is where things get really interesting, because narcissists don't actually operate from a place of strength. It appears that way at first, right? They seem dominant, self-assured, in control. But in reality, narcissism is a defense mechanism. It's a shield built to protect an internal void, an unbearable fragility at their core. Their entire existence is built on a desperate need to avoid facing that fragility. And so when reality starts breaking through, when truth begins to seep in, the narcissist has two choices: face it or fight it. And almost invariably, they choose to fight it. But the problem with fighting truth is that truth is relentless. It doesn't go away just because you want it to. It doesn't submit to your demands. It waits, it watches. And it grows in momentum. You see this in history and literature and mythology. The tyrant king who rules through deceit eventually falls to the weight of his own corruption. The manipulative advisor, the deceitful ruler, the egotistical leader, they all suffer the same fate. They believe, arrogantly, that they are above truth, that they can dictate what is real and what isn't. But reality isn't a game you win through force of will. Reality is bigger than you. And so what happens? The collapse. When the truth finally bursts forth, it does so with an almost divine inevitability. Maybe it's a personal reckoning, a sudden realization by those around them that they've been duped. Maybe it's a professional downfall, the exposure of a carefully constructed empire of deception. Or maybe it's something even grander, something they never saw coming, a complete unraveling of their life's work, their relationships, their identity itself. And the irony, the tragedy, really is that they did it to themselves. They thought they were playing the game, but the game was playing them. They thought they were the ones orchestrating reality, but reality was simply waiting for the moment to correct itself. Now, this correction, this exposure of truth is often painful. Not just for the narcissist, but for those caught in their web. Because when truth erupts, it doesn't do so gently. It tears through falsehoods like fire. And that can be devastating. It can leave wreckage. People who believed in the narcissist, who were drawn into their world, are often left in a state of shock because they too have to face the fact that they were deceived. But here's the thing, truth is also liberating. It is the foundation upon which real growth, real healing, and real stability are built. And that's why despite the destruction, despite the pain, the collapse of a narcissist's deception is ultimately a blessing, not just for those they've harmed, but for reality itself. Because once the lies are gone, once the falsehoods are stripped away, something new can finally emerge. And that something, if built on truth, responsibility, and genuine integrity, will be infinitely stronger than the fragile house of cards that preceded it. Pain, it's an unavoidable part of life, and it's something that we all encounter, often in ways we never expected. You see, when someone wounds you, when they betray you, deceive you, manipulate you, it's not just the immediate injury that you have to contend with. It's the aftermath, the deep psychological and emotional disarray that follows. Because what pain really does is confront you with a choice, and that's something people don't often consider. They think suffering is just suffering, as though it's something random and meaningless, something inflicted upon them by an uncaring world. But that's not true, not at all. Suffering, when examined properly, always presents a fork in the road. One direction leads toward bitterness, resentment, nihilism. It's easy to go that way, and that's precisely why so many people do. You get hurt, and what happens? You tell yourself that the world is unfair, that people are cruel, that trust is for fools. You become cynical, withdrawn. You start to believe that there's no point in striving for anything better because in the end, everything just falls apart anyway. And it makes sense, at least on the surface. It's a seductive way to think. If you believe that life is nothing more than a cruel joke, then at least you don't have to take responsibility for improving your own circumstances. You don't have to do the hard work of rebuilding. But there's another option, and this is where things get interesting, because the other option is to take that pain, to stare it straight in the face, and to transform because of it. That's the harder path, but it's also the path that leads somewhere meaningful. It's the difference between being destroyed by suffering and being tempered by it like iron and fire. This isn't just philosophical speculation, it's a fundamental truth that has been repeated throughout human history. Look at the biblical story of Joseph. His brothers threw him into a pit. They sold him into slavery. They destroyed his life as he knew it. And he had every reason to become resentful, to curse the world, to sink into despair. But he didn't. Instead, he adapted. He worked. He refused to be consumed by his suffering. And what happened? He rose. Slowly, steadily, he ascended, not despite his suffering, but because of it. And in the end, the very thing that was meant to destroy him became the foundation for his greatest success. Now, that's something worth thinking about because it means that suffering isn't meaningless. It means that the pain you experience isn't just some cosmic accident, it's a test, a crucible, an opportunity to become something more than you were before. And that's the challenge that life presents to all of us. When you're wounded, you can either let that pain define you in the worst way possible, or you can use it as the raw material for something greater. But that's not easy. In fact, it's incredibly difficult because transformation, real transformation, requires you to confront things about yourself that you might not want to see. It forces you to acknowledge the depth of your suffering, to sit with it, to wrestle with it, and then to decide that you're not going to be broken by it. And that's terrifying because change, true, meaningful change, requires an admission of weakness. It requires an acknowledgement that the way you were living before wasn't sufficient. That's a hard pill to swallow, but it's also necessary. And here's something even more fascinating. The people who emerge from suffering stronger aren't the ones who ignore their pain. No, that's a mistake. If you pretend you're fine when you're not, if you shove your suffering into the depths of your psyche and refuse to acknowledge it, you don't actually escape it. You just bury it. And buried pain doesn't go away, it festers. It manifests in ways you don't even realize. It poisons your relationships, your decisions, your outlook on life. The people who truly rise above suffering are the ones who confront it honestly. They say, yes, this happened. Yes, it was horrible. Yes, it has changed me. But they don't stop there. They ask the most important question of all, now what? Because pain is raw energy. And energy, if harnessed properly, can be used to build something new. Think about it like this. When a forest burns down, it's a disaster. But what happens next? The ash left behind becomes fertile ground for new life. The destruction, as terrible as it was, creates the conditions for regrowth, and humans are no different. Your suffering, if you allow it, can become the foundation for a stronger, sharper, more resilient version of yourself. But you have to be willing to do the work. You have to be willing to rebuild. That means learning from your pain instead of running from it. It means examining yourself deeply, asking what this suffering is trying to teach you. Because pain is a teacher, often the most brutal and relentless one there is, but a teacher nonetheless. It shows you where you were vulnerable. It reveals your blind spots. It forces you to grow in ways that comfort never could. And that's an idea worth considering. So let's say you've been hurt. Let's say someone betrayed you, lied to you, manipulated you. What do? You could shut down. You could say, well, that's it. I'm never trusting anyone again. And sure, that might protect you from future pain, but it also prevents you from living. It prevents you from experiencing real connection, real joy, real meaning. You end up safe but empty. And that's no way to live. And this is where courage comes in. You could say, I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to become wiser. I'm going to be more discerning about who I let into my life. But I'm not going to let one person's betrayal turn me into a bitter shell of who I used to be. That's the path of strength. That's the path that leads somewhere meaningful. Because the truth is, pain isn't just something that happens to you, it's something that can work for you if you let it. It can shape you into someone who is more capable, more aware, more resilient. And that doesn't mean the suffering was justified. It doesn't mean what happened to you was okay. But it does mean that you get to decide what comes next. And that's the real power in all of this. The narcissist, the betrayer, the person who hurt you, they might have tried to break you. They might have tried to take something from you, but they don't get to decide your future. Only you do. And when you understand that, when you truly accept that your pain is an opportunity rather than just a punishment, you become unstoppable. Because the worst thing that could have happened to you has already happened. And you're still here. You're still standing, which means you're stronger than you think. And if you have the courage to step forward, to use that pain instead of letting it use you, then there is no limit to what you can become. Actions have consequences. It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not. Reality doesn't care about your opinion on the matter. There are fundamental moral and psychological laws built into existence itself, and when you violate them, you pay the price. You might not pay it immediately. In fact, you might even get away with it for a disturbingly long time. But the thing about reality is that it's patient. It waits. It watches. And then at the right moment, when you least expect it, the consequences come crashing down. Now, narcissists are an interesting case study in this because at first glance, it seems like they're winning. They're manipulative, deceitful, and often very good at getting what they want. They know how to craft an image, how to tell the right lies to the right people. How to tell the right lies to the right people, how to control narratives so that they appear competent, successful, even admirable. And for a time, this works. It really does. They build careers, relationships, social circles, all based on a carefully constructed illusion. They take advantage of trust, twisting it for their own benefit. And for a while, they seem untouchable. But here's the thing, they aren't. Because reality is structured in such a way that deception cannot be sustained indefinitely. Lies require constant maintenance. Every falsehood must be reinforced by another and another and another. It's like juggling knives. The more you throw into the air, the harder it becomes to keep control. And eventually, inevitably, you slip. The illusion cracks. Someone starts asking the wrong questions. Someone notices an inconsistency. Someone, whether a friend, a colleague, or a partner, finally pieces together that things don't quite add up. And once that process begins, once doubt starts to take root, it spreads. Because truth has a peculiar quality it wants to be known. It presses forward. Even when people try to suppress it, even when they try to bury it under layers of deception, it finds a way out. And when it does, it tends to erupt, not slowly, but catastrophically. Think about it like gravity. If you jump off a building, the fall might feel exhilarating at first. You might even convince yourself that you're flying. And for a while, there are no consequences. There's just speed, momentum, and the illusion of control. But the thing about gravity is that it doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care how much you believe you're above it. It doesn't care how confident you are in your ability to defy the laws of physics. At some point, the ground arrives. And the longer the fall, the greater the impact. This is exactly what happens with narcissists. They live as though the rules don't apply to them. They lie, cheat, manipulate. They break trust, damage relationships, exploit people for personal gain. And they assume arrogantly that they can do so forever. But they can't, because there are natural consequences to these behaviors. Let's take relationships as an example. A narcissist thrives on control. They feed off admiration, off the sense they are superior, untouchable. But relationships, real relationships, aren't built on control. They're built on trust, on reciprocity, on genuine connection. And so the narcissist, by their very nature, undermines the very thing they need most. They demand loyalty without offering it in return. They expect devotion without providing stability. They see people not as individuals, but as tools useful so long as they serve a purpose, disposable the moment they don't. And what happens? People catch on. Not immediately. Often it takes years, but eventually the pattern becomes clear. Friends drift away. Partners leave. Colleagues distance themselves, and suddenly the narcissist finds themselves alone, isolated. Their charm, their manipulation, their carefully maintained mask, it stops working. And when that happens, they are forced to face what they've become. But it doesn't stop there. Because beyond personal relationships, narcissists often climb into positions of power. Maybe they rise in their careers, amassing influence, crafting a reputation for themselves. And for a time, they appear unstoppable. But power, real, sustainable power, requires competence. It requires integrity, and a narcissist, by definition, lacks these things. Their leadership is based on illusion, not substance. They succeed through deception, through playing people against each other, through empty displays of confidence rather than actual ability. And that's a problem, because power, true power, is a burden, not a privilege. It requires responsibility, a deep understanding of the systems you're influencing, an ability to manage complexity honestly. And when someone reaches power through manipulation rather than merit, they eventually encounter situations that expose their incompetence. They make promises they can't keep. They take risks they don't fully understand. They push their luck one step too far. And that's when it happens, the collapse. One day the truth breaks through. A scandal erupts. A long-buried deception surfaces. A series of miscalculations, each minor in isolation, suddenly compound into an unmanageable crisis. And when that happens, the narcissist, who has spent years crafting an image of invulnerability, finds themselves in freefall. They scramble to regain control, but it's too late. Their carefully constructed network of alliances and enablers turns against them. The very people who once supported them out of fear or admiration now see them for what they are: weak, desperate, exposed. And at that moment, when the consequences finally crash down upon them, there is no one left to shield them from the fallout. This is not speculation. This is a pattern. You see it in history. You see it in literature. You see it in politics, in business, in personal relationships. It's universal. Because the idea that you can cheat reality indefinitely is a delusion. The idea that you can manipulate, deceive, and control without consequence is a lie. And eventually that lie collapses under the weight of its own contradictions. And the deeper irony in all of this, the narcissist who spent their life seeking dominance, craving admiration, avoiding accountability, often ends up powerless, despised, and alone. Because the very tactics they relied on to climb are the same ones that ensure their downfall. The very lack of integrity that allowed them to manipulate others is the same lack of integrity that ensures they cannot sustain what they've built. That's the tragedy of it all. And that's why consequences always arrive. Not because the universe is cruel, not because fate is unfair, but because reality corrects itself. And those who ignore that fact, who think they can twist truth without being crushed by it, are always, always wrong. There's something deeply unsettling about loss, especially when it comes suddenly, when it feels unjust, when it leaves you questioning everything you thought you knew. And the thing about human beings is that we're wired for attachment. We build structures around the people in our lives, our relationships, our routines, our sense of meaning, and when one of those structures collapses, it can feel like an existential earthquake. You look at the wreckage and ask, why did this have to happen? Why was I put through this? Why did I invest so much in something that ended this way? And that's a fair question. It's the question of someone trying to make sense of suffering, which is exactly what we do when we're confronted with something painful and unexpected. But there's another question, one that people don't ask as often, but perhaps should. Why did this go on for as long as it did? See, it's easy to get caught up in the wrong narrative to assume that something was taken from you when in reality you were taken from it. And that's a difficult shift in perspective because at first loss feels like pure destruction. When a relationship collapses, when someone you trusted betrays you, when something you built falls apart, your first instinct is to focus on what was lost, the time, the effort, the emotional investment. But what if the greater danger wasn't the ending, but the fact that it lasted as long as it did? What if the real question isn't why was I removed, but why did I stay? And that's something to reflect on. Because people stay in toxic, dysfunctional situations for a long list of reasons. Maybe it's habit, maybe it's fear. Maybe it's the belief that things will get better if you just endure long enough. And that's not entirely irrational after all. Persistence is a virtue. Commitment is a virtue. But it's only a virtue when it's applied in the right context. If you're committed to something that's fundamentally broken, then what you're practicing isn't virtue, it's self-destruction. And that's something people don't always want to admit because it's painful. It forces you to acknowledge that you should have left earlier, that there were warning signs you ignored, that your instincts were trying to tell you something long before things reached their breaking point. But here's where it gets even more interesting, because sometimes when you refuse to remove yourself from a destructive situation, something else does it for you. People call it fate, call it divine intervention, Call it whatever you want, but sometimes things end for a reason that's beyond your immediate understanding. You get pushed out of something that you would have clung to indefinitely. And at first, that feels like punishment. It feels cruel. You think, why was this taken from me? But what if the real tragedy would have been staying? Because here's something to consider if you're in a relationship with a narcissist. You're not in a relationship at all. At least, not in the way a healthy relationship is supposed to function. What you have is a psychological power struggle disguised as love. You have something that, on the surface, might have looked real moments of affection, shared experiences, a sense of attachment, but at its core, it was a one-sided, extractive dynamic. A narcissist doesn't love in the way love is meant to work. Love is about mutual recognition, about seeing another person in their full complexity, about valuing them for who they are, not just for what they provide. But a narcissist, they don't see people that way. They see function, not personhood. You were there to serve a role. Maybe it was validation. Maybe it was admiration. Maybe it was emotional stability. But whatever it was, you were a means to an end. And here's the hard truth. When someone views you that way, they will never change. Not in the way you hope they will. You can wait, you can hope, you can give them 1,000 chances, but the fundamental problem remains. Because change only happens when there's an internal recognition of error, and narcissists are almost constitutionally incapable of that recognition. Their entire psychological framework is built on the idea that they are never wrong, that it's always someone else's fault, that their actions are always justified, that they are in some way above accountability. And if that's the case, what hope do you have of building something real with them? See, what people don't often realize is that sometimes the pain of separation isn't suffering, it's liberation. But it doesn't feel that way at first. It feels like something has been torn from you, because in a sense it has. When you're deeply entangled in a narcissistic relationship, your sense of self becomes compromised. Your boundaries get eroded. You start to doubt your own perceptions, your own needs, your own worth. You become conditioned to prioritize them, to revolve around their moods, their desires, their approval. And when that's stripped away, you don't just lose them, you lose the version of yourself that was built around them. And that's terrifying, because you don't know who you are without them. But here's the secret: that version of you was never the real you to begin with. It was a version shaped by manipulation, by self-denial, by the need to keep the peace at the cost of your own authenticity. So when a narcissist discards you, or when circumstances force you apart, what's really happening? You're being freed. And that freedom doesn't feel good at first because it's unfamiliar. It feels like drifting in open water after spending years in a sinking ship. But think about that for a second. You were in a sinking ship. And no matter how much time you invested in trying to patch the holes, no matter how much effort you put into keeping it afloat, it was always going down. And here's the really crucial thing: when you're removed from something dysfunctional, you're not just losing something, you're making space for something better. But you can't see that at first. You can't see it because the immediate pain is too loud, because your focus is still on what was taken rather than on what is now possible. And that's where trust comes in. Trust in the idea that loss, when properly understood, is often a prelude to transformation. That what feels like destruction is sometimes a form of protection. That you weren't just pulled away from something, you were given back to yourself. But it's up to you to accept that. It's up to you to rebuild, to rediscover who you are outside of their influence, to recognize that the pain of separation wasn't punishment, it was rescue. And once you grasp that, really grasp it, you start to see your past not as a tragedy, but as a lesson. You start to see that what you lost was something that was never truly yours to begin with. And what you gain, that's up to you. But it starts with understanding that you weren't abandoned, you were set free. And that might just be the greatest gift of all. There's something deeply compelling about the idea that you are called to rise above, that no matter what's happened, no matter how much suffering you've endured, you have an obligation not just to survive, but to transcend. That's a powerful idea. And it's not just an abstract notion, not just some empty encouragement thrown out to make you feel better. It's a moral responsibility. See, when you've been hurt deeply, profoundly hurt, there's a temptation to stay there, to sink into resentment, to let the pain define you, to let it wrap around you like a second skin until it becomes part of who you are. And that makes sense because suffering changes people. It marks you, and if you're not careful, it corrupts you. It twists your perception of the world, of yourself, of what's possible. And that's dangerous. Because when you start to see the world through the lens of your suffering, you begin to justify all kinds of things: self-pity, bitterness, even revenge. But here's the truth: you are not called to that. You are not called to stay small, to stay trapped, to let someone else's brokenness define your future. That's not the path. That's not where meaning is found. define your future. That's not the path. That's not where meaning is found. The path, the real path, is found in rising above it. In refusing to let the worst thing that's happened to you be the thing that dictates the rest of your life. Now, let's be clear, that doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending the pain didn't happen or pretending that the damage wasn't real, because it was real. The betrayal, the manipulation, the emotional toll, it happened. And pretending otherwise is just another form of self-deception. You don't get stronger by lying to yourself. You don't rise above something by ignoring it. No, you confront it. You look it dead in the eye and you acknowledge exactly what it did to you. And then you move forward anyway, because that's what it means to be truly formidable. That's what it means to walk with truth, responsibility, and strength. It means carrying the weight of your suffering without letting it crush you. It means taking full responsibility, not for what was done to you, because that wasn't your fault, but for what you do with it now. Because that part is up to you. And this is where people get it wrong. They think rising above means getting even. That somehow proving yourself means making the other person suffer in return. But that's not strength. That's not victory. That's just another kind of enslavement. Because if your entire sense of justice, of meaning, of closure is dependent on seeing them fall, then guess what? They still control you. They still dictate your emotions. They still determine the trajectory of your life. And that's the last thing you want. See, true strength isn't about beating someone else. It's about becoming so much more than what they tried to reduce you to. It's about refusing to let their weakness make you weak. And that's not easy. It takes discipline. It takes an almost unbearable level of self-awareness. But it's the only way forward, because if you let resentment take over, if you let bitterness fester, then you don't rise, you sink. And sinking feels justified at first. It feels like you're protecting yourself, but it's a trap, because resentment doesn't just stay where it starts. It spreads. It corrupts. And before you know it, it's poisoned everything. It's in the way you think, the way you speak, the way you interact with others. And worst of all, it keeps you stuck in the same cycle that hurt you in the first place. And that's something to consider very seriously. If you were wounded by someone who was trapped in their own dysfunction, who lied, who manipulated, who refused to take responsibility, then the greatest tragedy would be to become like them. And that's what bitterness does. It turns you into the very thing you despise. So the only real way forward is transformation. You take the pain, you take the loss, and instead of letting it destroy you, you let it shape you into something stronger, something sharper, something more capable. You take responsibility for the one thing you always have control over, yourself. And that means you build something meaningful. Because meaning, real, deep, sustaining meaning, doesn't come from tearing things down. It doesn't come from seeing someone else fail. It comes from creating, from contributing, from becoming the kind of person who cannot be broken by their past. And you might think, well, that sounds good in theory, but how do you actually do that? You do it by taking action. By getting your life in order. By doing the things that push you forward, even when you don't feel like it. Because that's the hard truth. Your feelings don't get a vote when it comes to what's necessary. Maybe you don't feel like moving on. Maybe you don't feel like focusing on the future instead of the past. Maybe you don't feel like building something when you're still mourning what was lost. But you do it anyway. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is wasting your life mourning something that never truly served you. The alternative is spending your time looking back instead of moving forward. And that's unacceptable. That's no way to live. So instead you rise, you take everything that happened, all of it, the good, the bad, the devastating, and use it as fuel. You make the decision, the conscious, deliberate decision that no one, no betrayal, no pain will have the power to define you more than you define yourself. Because that's the key. You define yourself, not them. Not the past, not the things that tried to break you. You decide what your life will mean. And that means taking back control. Not by seeking revenge, not by proving a point to them, but by proving a point to yourself. That you are not small, that you are not weak, that you are not trapped by what happened to you. You are capable, you are resilient, and you are called to something far greater than bitterness, far greater than revenge, far greater than just surviving. You are called to rise above, to transcend, to become formidable, not in a way that dominates, but in a way that cannot be dominated. In a way that builds, that creates, that thrives despite it all. And if you do that, if you make that choice, then you win. You win in the only way that matters. Because your life will no longer be defined by what someone else did to you. It will be defined by what you chose to become because of it. People often expect justice to be swift, as if wrongdoing should be met with an immediate and equal response. But that's not how reality works. And that's not how God works. His justice isn't about delivering a quick, emotional reaction. It's about setting the conditions for truth to reveal itself, for transformation to occur, and for ultimate balance to be restored. When someone harms you, especially someone narcissistic, someone who thrives on manipulation and control, it's natural to want instant retribution. You want them to feel what you felt. You want them to see their own destruction unfold before them. But that's not your role. That's not where your energy should go. Because the universe or God or whatever you choose to call the structure of reality handles it far better than you ever could. See, narcissists live in contradiction. They build their lives on falsehood, on an illusion of superiority, on a deep unwillingness to confront the truth of who they are. And you can't escape truth forever. It catches up. It seeps through the cracks. It erodes the foundations they've so carefully built. Their relationships crumble. Their ability to manipulate weakens. They get exposed little by little or all at once. And when that happens, it's far worse than any punishment you could have devised. But here's what really matters. Your task isn't to wait for their downfall. Your task is to rise. If you let bitterness take hold, if you become consumed by what happened to you, then they still have power over you. But if you take that pain and use it to become stronger, wiser, and more formidable, then you win. You win because you're no longer defined by their brokenness. You win because they couldn't break you. And that's the best kind of justice. Not vengeance, not destruction, but becoming someone they could never control.
And that was Jordan Peterson. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative of the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that determinism is a choice.